Elissa Giambastiani is a chair of a new committee we have at the league, campaign reform. So what is it in Marin County that we need to reform?
You all know that the league has a long-held position that elections should be fair and transparent. And in the past, that's the way it was in Marin County. Candidates would just present their credentials to the voters and they didn't have to resort to slander or innuendo, and it was all very cordial. Well, what's happened in the past few years is that the climate has changed, and now candidates are very vulnerable to being attacked by hit pieces. And as a result of that, there are a lot of people of very good will who would like to be candidates, or might be good council candidates or district candidates, have decided that they don't want to do it because they're afraid that they're going to be victims of personal attacks. So because of this uncivil climate and the negative effect that it's having on potential candidates in Marin, the league has decided to do something about it. So we formed a campaign reform committee, and that committee looked at 6 elections that have been held in the past 5 years. And they found that in all 6 of those elections, independent expenditure committees played a big role in funding the hit pieces. So what are independent expenditure committees, you might ask? They are, we like to call them IECs for short. Independent expenditure committees can raise and spend as much money as they want to support or oppose a candidate. They only have one rule, and that is that they cannot coordinate their activities with the candidate. You all will remember the Swift Boat ad campaign that ran against John Kerry in the last election. Mm-hmm. Those ads were created and funded by independent expenditure committees. IECs have been used in the Marin Municipal Water District race, they've been used in the Marin Healthcare District race, and the Assembly race, and in several City Council races. So this is now becoming common. Since they are legal, we are restricted in what we can do about them. So the biggest thing that we need to do right now is to make them transparent. So our plan is we've come up with a number of suggestions that we think could be implemented by an ordinance. And we've taken our ideas to the Board of Supervisors. As a matter of fact, we met with Supervisor Brown and Supervisor Adams yesterday. And they were very interested in our suggestions. We are hoping that they will create a model ordinance regulating IECs. And then we'll take that model ordinance and take it to other cities in the county in hopes that all of those cities will adopt the same kind of ordinance.
What would some of the provisions of that ordinance be?
Well, some of the provisions would be that IECs must register with the county as soon as they are formed. Right now, they can register in Sacramento. So it can take a very long time before that information filters back down to the county or the cities, and nobody knows that this entity is in formation and is starting to work. We think that all contributions to IECs should immediately be posted on the county's website or on the city's website if they adopt it, so that people can see who's contributing. IECs very often use strange names for their committee, and they use mailboxes for their identification. So we would like the ordinance to say that all IECs must have a physical residence, a physical location for the committee, not just a mailbox at Kinko's. We also would like to have all of the campaign materials list the major donors. And the last thing is that we also want fake polls, which are called push polls. Have you ever heard of those?
Push polls.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Those are polls where the recipient is asked a number of questions, and then the last question is something like, well, if you knew that candidate X had committed perjury, how would you feel about voting for him? Or something like that. And so we think that those calls should note right up front who the committee is that's funding it and which candidate they are supporting. So we hope to educate voters about these hit pieces. We want to really create dialogue. We want it to become uncomfortable for people to do this in our community. We want to create a group of people who will be willing to go to public meetings and stand up and say, we don't want this in our town anymore.
Yeah. And that's how the general public can help.
And the general public can help by doing that. If anyone is interested in being part of our outreach in your community, all they have to do is send an email to the league and we will add you to the list.
All right.
Okay.
Alyssa, how could the ordinance be enforced and what teeth could the Board of Supervisors put in it?
That's a little more difficult. The Board of Supervisors right now is sort of chewing that one, chewing that one over to see what could actually be done. There's fining that could be invoked. The league has suggested that we create that the Board of Supervisors creates a campaign supervisorial committee, campaign oversight committee. That's the word I wanted to use. A campaign oversight committee that could respond to complaints about hit pieces.
Okay. One of the problems with this kind of reform is that people always find a way around it.
I know.
In fact, the league originally thought that the IEDs were a good idea. They had the idea of birders getting together and putting their little money in, and that turns into big money. It seems naive now to look back on it that we thought that it would give power to smaller groups of people. Instead, it's the big ones have taken over.
That's right. So, that's right. And even if this clean campaign reform goes through, where the citizens would fund all political campaigns, it still wouldn't affect the IECs.
Right.
They could still spend as much money as they wanted to.
Right.
So I think the only thing that we can do is to try to make this uncomfortable for IECs and for elected,
and transparent.
Yes, and transparent, and for elected officials to say, no more. We don't want this kind of negative campaigning in our town.
And what about trying to get candidates to say, I didn't do this?
That's right. We need them to refute it.
Yes, we need
them to stand up and say,
I disapprove of this.
That's right. That's right.
I don't want this kind of support.
Right.